several kilometres. The Harbour Tunnel Authority says it couldn't revert to the backup generator because that was off being repaired. This next story sounds like the plot from an adventure novel. A group of mercenaries flies into Africa on a mission to overthrow the government of an oil-rich nation. But it all went horribly wrong, and they could now be facing the death penalty.
In shackles and facing a possible death sentence, Simon Mann, the former SAS commander, accused of leading 70 mercenaries plotting to overthrow Equatorial Guinea's government. Mann pleaded guilty to trying to procure dangerous weapons in Zimbabwe, but insists he never received them because the deal never went through. Zimbabwe says it foiled the plot after it detained the group's plane at Harare Airport in March. Officials say Mann was planning to use weapons from the country's state arms supplier, but he claims the group was heading to the Democratic Republic of Congo to provide security for mining operations.
We are moving forward to the barriers now.
Simon Mann has never been far from the limelight. The former Etonian even turned his hand to acting after his military career, here playing a British soldier in this ITV film about the Bloody Sunday killings in Northern Ireland. In the 1990s, he helped to form the controversial private security firm Sandline International. It was linked to Sierra Leone's civil war and faced claims of delivering guns to the country while it was under a United Nations arms embargo.
To finance, and some bad news for motorists this morning, we'll soon be paying more for petrol after oil prices surged to all-time records overnight. And with all the details, we're joined by Ross Greenwood.
Yes, thanks, Georgie. Oil prices soared to more than $43 a barrel US after the Russian government ordered one of its biggest producers to stop pumping until it pays its taxes. And that battle of wills in Moscow is likely to end up costing us all dearly.
Yukos is a single company which produces more oil than the whole of Libya. Today, the Russian authorities ordered the oil giant to grind its production to a halt. The result, oil prices soared to $43 a barrel. Behind today's crisis is the dramatic fall from grace of the Yukos boss, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who's in custody accused of massive tax evasion. He's Russia's richest man, but Khodorkovsky fell foul of President Putin when he challenged him politically. Now the fallout from their feud could affect us all. Motorists may not suffer the consequences immediately, but if oil prices stay high, then eventually we'll feel the effect of this feud in Moscow on our forecourts too.
Locally, shares in the building products company James Hardie have slipped this morning after suggestions from an inquiry into the handling of asbestos victims that it may have left the compensation fund $2.2 billion short of cash. Hardie shares are down 38 to $5.53 in early trading, a fall of more than 6%. And property giant General Property Trust says profits this year gained 4%. The trust this week rejected a $10 billion merger proposal with its manager and parent Lend-Lease. In early trading, the All Ordinaries Index of Australian shares was ahead 6.9 points. The US dollar is weaker against most currencies after gains overnight. And the Australian dollar has picked up against most, buying 69.95 US cents, 57.96 euro cents and 78.04 Japanese yen. And that's it in finance, and it's back to you, Georgie.
Thank you, Ross. Well, just 2 weeks out from the Olympics, British scientists have developed a new drug test to detect human growth hormone. The World Anti-Doping Agency says it will use the test, but athletes competing in Athens may not go under the microscope until the Games are over.
Scientists from the Southampton University are confident they're onto a sure thing. Never before has there been such a conclusive test for human growth hormone.
Hopefully people are realising that they will be tested, they will be caught and they will be punished for it.
Human growth hormone is made in the pituitary gland. It works by telling the liver to produce hormones, the effect flowing on to build muscles. It occurs naturally, making it hard to detect. The test has been in the making for 7 years, but has been kept under wraps until now. Even if athletes have recently stopped taking the hormone, this test will still catch them out, but it probably won't happen during the Games.
I would rather wait, test the samples later, and if we're a couple of months behind, well, that's not the end of the world.
Scientific teams are confident the tests will stand up to any legal test, but the anti-doping agency isn't taking any chances.
We will follow up on this, and we will take away medals from people who won them by cheating.
There's no denying the find is an exciting one, but it's still only a test for 1 performance-enhancing drug, and all the time more are being developed.
And until the testers are a step ahead of the athletes, you will always have people who will try, and many will succeed at getting away with it.
Mark Burrows, National 9 News.
Sport after the break, including Mark O'Neill's penalty for that high tackle on Danny Williams, and Leighton Hewitt's tough battle at the Canadian Masters. The NRL judiciary has found West's Tigers forward Mark O'Neill guilty of a careless high tackle. O'Neill hasn't accumulated enough penalty points to warrant a ban, though he's still in doubt for Saturday's clash with Parramatta because of a concussion.
Mark O'Neill arrived at the judiciary knowing he wouldn't be suspended. The 29-year-old fought for his innocence, backed by a flawless record. His careless high tackle charge on Danny Williams proved the trigger to the Melbourne forward's king hit on O'Neill just moments later. The panel took 10 minutes to find O'Neill guilty, but the West Tigers forward hadn't enough penalty points to be sidelined.
This is my first time down here. It's all sort of relatively new to me. I thought we put a strong case forward and had an opportunity to air our side of the story, but not to be.
From Berries to Bulldogs, 70 years of the Canterbury club were celebrated last night at a formal dinner featuring stars past and present.
There's been some massive success at the club, and there's been also times when things haven't looked so great, and that's what made this club so good.
Upheavals at the start of the season saw the famous Mortimer and Hughes families boycott the event, though former teammate Terry Lamb set their record straight.
They're part of the club, they're part of that 70 years, and a good part of the 70 years, and they'll always be remembered in the club.
To AFL, and the divisions at Richmond have eased. President Clinton Casey remains in place with the annual general meeting brought forward to December. Two supporters of former Vice President and faction leader Brendan Schwab have been installed to deal with the coaching appointment and the club's accounts.
Clinton will certainly participate in the discussions with myself and the key members of both groups with a view to getting the best outcome we can. That outcome will be measured by the quality of the board moving forward.
Charles Christian, National 9 News.
Leighton Hewitt needed all his fighting spirit to survive a first-round encounter against Spain's Rafael Nadal at the Toronto Masters. Hewitt dropped the first set 6-1 before grinding out a tough three-set victory.
Hewitt returned to the court for the first time since Wimbledon and clearly hadn't had time to clean off the rust. At 18, Nadal is the latest to come off the seemingly endless production line of Spanish players. And after dropping the first game, he reeled off 6 straight to pocket the first set. A stream of unforced errors had Hewitt on a fast track to a first-round exit. But in typical fashion, he found a way to get back on the rails.
What a volley from Hewitt.
After a struggle, he took the second set and then refused to give Nadal another looking.
He's motoring now, all right.
He won the decider 6-2 and will meet Czech veteran Jiří Novák in the second round.
It's all over.
Formula One and Australia's Mark Webber is ready to step into the fast lane after confirming he's signed with Grand Prix powerhouse Williams.
Of course, that's why I'm going there. Second and third is not something which Williams are too happy about, and winning races is what it's all about.
Webber began his F1 career with Minardi and is currently driving an unreliable Jaguar. His first race in a Williams will be at the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne next March. Chris Hodgkinson, National 9 News.
Still to come in the morning news, the latest weather details and The Who back in Australia for the first time in more than 30 years. Now for a look at the national weather, and the synoptic chart is dominated by a large, slow-moving high, which is extending a ridge over most of the country. Sydney dry, mainly sunny and 17 degrees, a fine 12 degrees for Canberra, a fine afternoon in Melbourne and 14, a similar day for Hobart, 15 and sunny in Adelaide. Perth is the exception, showers and 18 degrees, while Brisbane should be sunny and 22. And finally, more than 30 years after being hounded out of Australia, The Who has made a triumphant and long overdue return. Singer Roger Daltrey and guitar wizard Pete Townsend are the only surviving members of the band that last toured here in 1968. And while they're definitely older, they've lost none of their power or their trademark moves. The Who play another show in Sydney tonight before heading to Melbourne. And that is the morning news for this Thursday. Our next major bulletin is at 6 p.m. I'm Georgie Gardner. See you tomorrow.